Mr. Nosey by Roger Hargraves. Mr. Nosey liked to know about everything that was going on. He was always poking his nose into other people's business. Mr. Nosey is the sort of person who, if they came upon a locked door, couldn't resist looking through the keyhole to see why the door had been locked. Mr. Nosey is the sort of a person who, if he had found an unopened letter addressed to somebody else, would simply have to open it to find out what was inside. Mr. Nosey is the sort of person who, if he was sitting reading his paper on the train, would rather read the paper of a person sitting next to him. Naturally, as you might well imagine, Mr. Nosey is not very popular. People did not like it the way in which Mr. Nosey would peek and pry into their face. They did not like it at all. And did that stop Mr. Nosey peeking and prying? It did not. Mr. Nosey lived in a funny tall tin house in a place called Tittletown. The people of Tittletown decided that Mr. Nosey is becoming too much nosy, and so they had a meeting to discuss what to do about him. We must find a way to stopping him from being so nosy, said old Mr. Chips, the town carpenter. That's right, said Miss Washer, who ran the Tittletown laundry. He needs to be taught a lesson. If only we could think of a way to stop poking his nose into anything, said Mr. Brush, the painter. And then a small spread of his face. Listen, he said, now grinning. I have a plan. All said together on the list of his plan. The following morning, Mr. Nosey was out walking out right till that high street when he heard somebody whistling behind one of the closed doors. I wonder what's going on here, he thought to himself, and tiptoeing out the door, he quietly opened it and peeked in. Splash! Went a very wet paintbrush right at the end of Mr. Nosey's nose. Going in right where to paint. Oh dear, I am sorry, said Mr. Brush, who was painting the inside of the door. Poor Mr. Nosey had to go straight home to remove the red paint, which is very difficult and rather painful. Mr. Brush chuckled to himself. The plan had begun. The following day, Mr. Nosey was walking past the laundry, and he heard somebody laughing on the other side of the wall. I wonder what's going on here, he thought, instead of look over the wall. Snap! Went a close peg right at the end of Mr. Nosey's nose. Oh dear, I'm so sorry, said Miss Washer, who was hanging up clothes to wash who's on the other side of the wall. Poor Mr. Nosey removed the clothes peg and went out the street feeling sorry for himself and his poor red nose. Miss Wash chuckled to herself. The plan is working. The next day, Mr. Nosey was walking across the fence when he heard hammering. I wonder what's going on here, he thought to himself, and creeping very quietly to the end of the fence, he peeked around. Bang! Went a hammer right at the end of Mr. Nosey's nose. Oh dear, I'm sorry, I shouldn't hold Mr. Chips. Who was nailing in his plank of the fence. Poor Mr. Nosey had to go home immediately and bandage his poor red nose. Mr. Chips began a broad grin. The plans are working very well indeed. The following day, Mr. Nosey is walking in the woods when he heard somebody sawing wood. I wonder what's going on here, he thought to himself, and he crept up behind a tree. He was just about to peer out behind the tree when it suddenly occurred to him that if he did, something very nasty might happen to his nose, and so he went his way without being nosy. Behind the tree, with a sob, raised his head, stood Mr. Herd the farmer. When he saw that Mr. Nosey had gone his way without being nosy, he laughed and laughed and laughed. The plan had worked. Mr. Herd hurried through to the town to tell everybody. The plan had really worked because after that, Mr. Nosey stopped being nosy and soon became very good friends with everybody in Tittletown. And that's really the end of the story. Except that you say, if you ever attempted to be as nosy as Mr. Nosey used to be, you'd better expect one thing. a sore nose. No boy, that verbal this cat. Why is Mr. Nosey some favorite cat? In 2008, he has Charlie Brown's hairstyle. And he has the orange nose. Super stink. I think Mr. Nosey's best friend's Mr. Small. So weird. I think it's some egads. I like it. It gets pee. It gets pee. You fuck.